Hi, I'm Pia. I'm an economic researcher and I teach macroeconomics. In this video, we're going to learn how economists think. More specifically, the scientific aspect of their reasoning. In order to do so, we're going to discuss how the scientific method is applied to economics, including the role of assumptions. Then, we'll explore the two most basic models used in macroeconomics, the circular flow of income and the production possibilities frontier. With this content, you'll be able to understand positive economics and how science is applied to economics. So let's begin. The scientific method consists on a structured process that aims to discover how the world operates by testing and verifying hypotheses. However, economics is a social science, and there are many events that may seem chaotic. That is why we ask ourselves many questions, such as: why did the government increase interest rates? Why did the price of oil increase? How can an economy increase production? The scientific method is a tool that seeks to answer them. Using science to try and explain the laws of nature and how the world works is called positivism. In other words, if we use this approach in economics, then we are using positive economics. Positive economics aims to answer these questions objectively. However, in economics, there are some things which are impossible to recreate. For example, imagine that we want to analyze the effect of fiscal policy. Suppose an increase in public spending in an economy's total output. First of all, there are many variables which may have an impact apart from the actual policy. Output may increase or decrease due to other things not related to the decision made by the government. For example, if we are speaking of an agricultural country, the weather is essential in order to have a good harvest. A good harvest can increase output, regardless of the decisions made by the government and vice versa. Second, economists also aren't allowed to manipulate policy in order to generate data, since that test would actually have an impact on the population. This is why conducting experiments in economics is often impractical. So, how do we apply the scientific method in economics? This process involves the use of pre-existing data, which is provided by theory and by history. A theory is a scientifically accepted, interrelated body of general principles used to explain and understand some aspects of the world. This is essential because it shows us what we already know, what is proved to be true, and what information may help us for every question that we seek to answer. Also, history is a key source of information. This is because history provides the opportunity to study the effects of past events, that is, without the need to recreate or simulate them. Then we have the hypothesis, which is the formulation of the questions that we mean to answer. This will be a proposition about the workings of the world that is inspired or implied by a theory, but it may or may not be true. For example, why do we spend money? And how do we answer them? We may never know the answers to those questions. What we actually do is test them. We verify those hypotheses by comparing situations, analyzing history, and using theory. To know if a hypothesis is right or wrong, comparison is made with data and empirical observations drawn from the real world. But we know that some things are impossible to recreate. And that is when we test hypotheses in economics. We have the possibility of some of the variables affecting a result. So, how do we manage that? Here is where we use assumptions. Assumptions play a key role in the scientific method since they aim to make the complex world more simple and easier to understand. They also allow to isolate the impact of a central variable on another, keeping the other variable fixed. This is known as ceteris paribus. Assumptions are essential to create models, since they help to simplify situations when we want to test our hypothesis. Economic models are tools that help us understand reality, and they use assumptions to be simpler and applicable to other contexts. We have two basic models that aim to explain economics' main principles. Ready to check them out? Let's go. The first model we'll discuss is the circular flow of income. This is a model that reflects how money circulates in an economy. it is important to go over some concepts first. First, we must consider factors of production. The factors of production are the inputs used in every or most production processes. This involves labor, the use of land or natural resources, capital, which is the investment, and entrepreneurship, which stands for the risk-taking activity of setting up a business. Each one of these factors has its own retribution. Labor is retributed in wages, natural resources in rents, capital in interest, and entrepreneurship in profits. Now let's look at the types of economic agents that participate and make decisions in an economy. First of all, we have the households. Each household has two main ways to participate in an economy. The first one consists on their role as consumers of goods and services. Then, they are the owners of the factors of production we just mentioned. They own either the land, capital, or the workforce, which is bought or rented by firms in exchange for wages, rent, or interest. Then we have the firms, who are the ones who sell those goods and services and buy the factors of production required to produce them. Now we can construct the basic circular flow of income diagram. Take a look first at the two arrows above. Firms sell their products in exchange for money. That money is spent by the consumers or the households. Those arrows then represent the market of goods and services. This shows us an illustration of total spending involving the exchange of all the goods and services. Now take a look at the bottom two arrows. The black one shows us how households sell or rent the land, capital, or the workforce. The red arrow completes the cycle by retributing those factors. Workers are paid their wages, capital is paid its interest, and natural resources are paid their rent. Those arrows then represent the market of factors of production. The retribution of each factor of production allows us to construct what we understand by income. Each factor of production generates revenue that will later be used as spending in the goods and services market. This model is usually one of the first approaches when studying macroeconomics, since it gives us a first glance of how the economy works. We can observe the flow of money as well as goods and services and how each stakeholder makes decisions in it. Then we have the second model, which is the Production Possibilities Frontier, or PPF for short. The PPF is a graph which reflects all the possible combinations of output within an economy. In order to simplify the analysis, this model has a basic assumption. This economy only produces two goods, X and Y. Now check the graph. The area formed below the curve represents all the combinations of output between X and Y. Each point in this area represents an amount of product X and an amount of product Y. Look at point A, for example. This is a combination of products X and Y which is not feasible for this economy, since it's outside the possibilities of production. Point B, on the other hand, represents a possible combination of products X and Y. Now check out point C. This combination is a more efficient option than B. Can you see why? This is because the curve represents the production capacity. C is more efficient than B because the economy is producing at full potential. There is no idle capacity. And what would happen if the economy grew because of higher productivity? The curve would shift, meaning that the production possibility expands. This allows us to do a quick exercise. Suppose an economy only produces toothpaste and headphones. The graph below illustrates the production possibilities curve. Which combination would you consider more efficient to increase output, A or B? If you chose option A, then you are correct. Point A reflects a more efficient combination since it allows for higher output than option B. We just did this exercise considering only efficiency, but it's not only about that. It is also essential to learn the concept of opportunity cost. As economists, we had to make many decisions keeping in mind the opportunity cost for each possibility. The PPF, in this case, shows us with each output combination the opportunity cost of sacrificing one unit from one product and replacing it with the other. other decisions are related to the productive structure. For example, if we produce using full capacity, we must know that there will be high costs related to maintenance, and that has the opportunity cost of not investing in order to expand the production capacity. On the other hand, if we choose to produce less, we may have more margin to invest and increase marginal productivity. Summing up, the PPF model provides us some basic notions related to macroeconomics. It illustrates how economic growth allows for more output, the difference between an efficient and a non-efficient outcome, and the trade-offs between each combination of output. As economists, we establish many decisions related to this. For example, we can choose to produce at full capacity, but that involves the opportunity cost of having less operational costs. What are the most common mistakes? A model is not an absolute truth. It is an explanation of certain events involving some assumptions. Also, remember that every decision made involves an opportunity cost. So what tip to think as an economist is consider every possibility. Wrapping up, we've seen in this video that positive economics seek to answer questions from reality in an objective manner. However, this is not that easy since it's very hard to recreate most events. That is why we use models to help us get a better understanding of certain events for making decisions. The two basic models we've seen in this video, for example, gave us the basic notions related to how markets operate and the process of decision-making. Those are the circular flow of income and the production possibilities frontier. Hope you enjoyed the video, and also, if you want to learn more, feel free to explore more about the topic on Chegg.